My first experience with an Apple product was in 2005 when I used the original iPod Shuffle. Then, a year later, I got my own iPod Shuffle, the second generation, and I used that for the next 3 years. This was my first introduction into the ease of use and the simplicity that Apple brings to the table. Ever since then, I've been on Apple products almost exclusively, but I also spent some time on Android and on a Windows PC that I built. With no change in the MacBook Pro's design in over 4 years, we finally got a new design in 2016. But with increasing quality of Windows machines from manufacturers like Dell and Razer, does Apple still make a machine that is worth spending $2,500 on? Welcome to my review of the 2016 MacBook Pro.
Apple continues to have the most well-designed laptops of any company. Their industrial design and attention to detail is shown in almost every product they've ever released, and this computer is no different. If Apple has lost any of their design focus since the loss of Steve Jobs, this laptop does not show it at all in the slightest. There are reports and videos of people having problems with these new Pros, either with the displays or other issues, but I have not experienced any problems. This is the most well-built piece of technology I've ever owned. Unfortunately, designing a good-looking and feeling product isn't everything, and some of the design choices in this laptop are things I don't agree with. Pursuing thinner and lighter and portable machines is fantastic, and I'm all for it, but when that pursuit starts to compromise features of the laptop, it becomes an issue. This machine is thinner in more than one way, but one part I really appreciate is the thinner bezels. You don't notice it while just using the laptop normally, but going back to a computer with huge bezels, there is a night and day difference. These slimmer bezels make the whole computer less wide and feel more modern, especially compared to the bezels of the MacBook Air, which can hide a small neighborhood behind them. Apple also chose to make this laptop thinner, which is fine, but I felt the previous version was thin enough, and because of this, the new Pros do have a shorter battery life. More on that later. The 2016 MacBook Pros with Touchbar both used 4 USB Type-C ports with Thunderbolt 3 support, while the non-Touchbar model is left with only 2 ports. The large amount of people against this port just don't understand how useful it can be if used correctly. Each of the ports on the 15-inch MacBook Pro are capable of 40 gigabits per second, which is insanely fast. For comparison, USB 2, which was the industry standard for years, is around 480 megabits per second at the highest end. USB 3 tops at around 5 gigabits per second, and USB 3.1 hits around 10 gigabits per second. The ports on the new MacBooks are USB Type-C and are running at the 3.1 spec, but are able to achieve the insane 40 gigabit per second through the use of Thunderbolt through the ports as well. Currently, the support for the new ports is not really there, but we need companies like Apple to continue to push new technologies. Inexplicably, Apple did not allow the ports to be used for external PCIe devices, or at least not yet. Hopefully this will be coming soon, as that is a large part of the power of these ports. Steve Jobs said, "Customers don't know what they want until we've shown them," and this is a great example of that. If the complaining consumers were always listened to, innovation would always be at a standstill. I stand by some of their port choices, but one of the ports that Apple removed that I do not agree with is the SD card slot. This is a port that cannot be easily replaced with USB Type-C because the port is not thin enough to be putting into cameras. This is the port that I wish would have stayed, and this is a place that the pursuit of thin and light compromised the convenience of using a laptop. Back to positives now though. As I mentioned earlier, the laptop is lighter than the previous generations, and as a user of the 2011 MacBook Air, the negligible difference in weight with all the improvements to screen size, resolution, and power is awesome. I don't notice a difference in weight when carrying both laptops in a backpack, and I'm impressed with the stuff that Apple packed into such a small laptop. People will complain, but there's no arguing that what Apple does is impressive. They managed to create a laptop using the latest top-of-the-line mobile chips that was thinner, lighter, and throttles less than the previous generation, which was significantly thicker than this laptop, and that is something that anyone who likes tech should be able to appreciate. After 5 years of using a laptop without the highest quality display, I was used to it, but after using a Retina display on a laptop, it is hard to go back. Not just in the resolution, but also because of the IPS panel and the color accuracy of this display. This display may be the best feature of this laptop, and one I didn't expect to notice too much of a difference in. But now, a high-quality display is one of the most important things for me. The bottom half of the computer is taken up by the insanely large trackpad. Great as all trackpads are, but they may have made it too large. Palm rejection works well, but I still have the occasional issue with the mouse clicking while resting my palms on the trackpad, causing me to start typing in a different place in a document or change windows when doing something. Not a huge issue, but I found the previous size fine, and this is a slight backward step for me. I have a feeling it may be for Apple Pencil support in the future, but now we just have a trackpad that dwarfs an iPhone 7. The keyboard has also changed. Due to the thinner profile of this laptop, the keyboard had to be slimmed down as well. It is using Apple's upgraded butterfly switches, and, aside from the time it took to get used to, the differences compared to the scissor switch that was used before, I love this keyboard. Easily became the best keyboard that I've ever used in a laptop, and rivals the typing experience from some of the mechanical keyboards that I use. It's much better than the 12-inch MacBook, and it's not a downgrade from the previous generation as some people thought it would be. Thumbs up here. Touch ID is great, works just as well as it does in any of the iPhones, but it needs to be supported in more places around the OS, and that will come in time. Now, on to the biggest change in the new Pros, the Touchbar. Currently, I really don't find it that useful. So far, I've only used it in Safari for a short time that I used it before switching back to Chrome, as well as in Final Cut while I was just playing around with it. While I personally haven't found it able to replace keyboard shortcuts or make anything that I'm doing on the computer any faster, I do see how it could be better taken advantage of in the future. Like how many products start out, there's just not enough support for the touch bar yet. In the Apple designed app it works well, but pretty much anything else that doesn't support it yet, the bar is just left blank. The function keys were not as used as often by me, except when debugging, so missing those wasn't too much of an issue, but I can definitely see why it is causing problems for people. There are the standard keys that are always shown that can be changed for the most used things for you. Since I never use Siri, I changed that button to a media control button, which is much more useful for me. Every app has the ability to change the touch bar to keep the most used items on it. Now, if I had designed the laptop, I would have kept the function keys and used the large space above the keyboard to put the touch bar. I can see ways the touch bar will be useful in the future, but unlike switching to USB-C, this isn't something that Apple should have pushed so hardly for. They are fixing a problem that doesn't exist, and it feels like they added the touch bar just to have a standout feature on their new computers. It worked though. When using this laptop, the first thing people would ask me was, is this the one that has the bar on top? So they definitely found it useful, and it works well. There have been reports that I saw on various news sites that say the Pros are actually slower than the previous models. In some way they're right, but only in a loose sense. The top-end models of both years perform very similar, but the previous model does run faster for a short time at full load. But with a continuous full load, the previous generation will begin to throttle down, while the 2016 MacBook will stay at full turbo boost on the CPU. The CPUs this year are based around Intel's Skylake architecture with the low-end 15-inch starting with the 6700HQ and going up to the 6920HQ in the highest-end model, with the 13-inch models using the more power-efficient chips. Apple's been criticized by sites and people for not using the next generation of Intel's chips, but they are missing the fact that the chips Apple uses are not available on the next generation of chips called Kaby Lake. Since Intel has been focused on the optimization of the recent generations of chips, instead of raw performance, the increases in performance from generation to generation has basically stagnated. While I do like that the chips in the new MacBook Pro are able to run without throttling, even when at full tilt, it is frustrating that the same level of performance could be had a few years ago. This makes sense though. I have nothing against Intel, but they don't need to innovate anymore to stay on top since their only competitor is offering up absolutely nothing in terms of competition at any level of CPUs. Where we see the real performance increases are in the drives, both with read and write speeds over 2 GB per second, which blows pretty much any other laptop away, even when compared to the SSDs in the Razer Blade Pro, which are running in RAID 0. The drives in that machine are at a similar speed to Apple's drive in this notebook. The speed of the drives makes the entire machine feel snappier, with applications opening faster and everything else that's taking advantage of the drive going much more quickly. RAM is also an important part of the experience of using a computer, and with the 15-inch MacBook Pro, the minimum, as well as the maximum amount of RAM, is 16 GB, which isn't as big of an issue for me as people are making it out to be. There are people that can actually take advantage of more than 16 GB of RAM, and there are millions more people complaining about things that will never affect them. For me, especially someone who came from a laptop with 4 GB of RAM, it hasn't been an issue, and I don't expect it to develop into an issue over the life of this machine. Overall, this laptop performs incredibly well, and has the power that I was looking for when upgrading to a new laptop. When looking to purchase a new laptop, I seriously considered a switch to Windows, but there are things that kept me in the Mac ecosystem. It all basically comes back to the integration of software and hardware on the Mac OS side of the fence. I started using Final Cut Pro last year, and I love that I was able to edit and even export without too much of an issue on my MacBook Air, something that wouldn't have been possible on the Windows side with any video editing software available there. The ability to easily receive messages and phone calls on any device is also useful, and something that I would miss. I'm not sure if I like the direction that Apple is taking with their Mac business, but for the time being, I'll remain a Mac user. Let's recap everything about these new MacBook Pros. On the outside, you have an incredibly well-built machine that no Windows notebook manufacturers are even coming close to, with a full aluminum casing, and now even the hinge is more well integrated into the body. The glowing Apple logo is lost to the thinness gods, replaced with a more polished Apple logo similar to the iOS devices. Overall, the new Pros are thinner as well as lighter than the outgoing machines, which is nice when you're carrying around a computer like this all day in a backpack. The replacement of every port with 4 USB-C ports with Thunderbolt is currently an inconvenience, but the forward thinking of Apple to push the computer market forward is a good thing. We need dongles and adapters now, but when more devices switch over to this standard, this notebook will have a good selection of ports. Unfortunately, we lost MagSafe, which actually worked really well to stop the destruction of Apple computers, but now the laptop can be charged from both sides. Also, Apple, the SD card slot should not have been removed. That is not a port that can be easily replaced with a USB-C drive, as most of the other things we can today. What was the reason behind this? Opening the awesome one-finger hinge unveils some of the biggest changes of the new MacBook Pros, starting with the upgraded screen. It keeps the same resolution as the previous computers, but ups the max brightness and increases the number of colors that the display can produce within the P3 color gamut. This is an incredible display that is at the top of levels with screens on any laptop today. The keyboard's created some controversy as well, but I've quickly gotten used to it and find it a lot faster and more comfortable than the previous Apple keyboards. Using it in the store, you'll probably hate it as I did, but after using it for a while, it became one of my favorite switch types. The upgraded butterfly switch that Apple is using is super fast and smooth to use. The trackpad is huge, but still the best trackpad on any laptop with a glass surface and the integration into the operating system. We also have the Touchbar, new and definitely something to remember the computer by, but still not sure how useful it'll end up being. Right now it has some cool features, but to be something that changes how you use a computer it needs more software support. Inside, we are rocking Intel Skylake quad-core i7s, which perform well, but aren't much of a performance increase over the Haswell chips used before. We also have the new mobile graphics chips from AMD, which are very power efficient, but this causes loss of CUDA acceleration in apps like Premiere and After Effects, but they work well enough for most other applications taking advantage of them. The drive speeds are much improved, making the whole machine feel faster, pulling over 2 GB per second. The battery is smaller, and while it reports a shorter battery life, I consistently get 10 to 12 hours of using a web browser with 10 tabs while listening to music at the same time. Not too bad.
Overall, I've been loving this computer, and I've been happy with the choice to stick with macOS for this generation. But it does seem like Apple is starting to neglect some of their PC business. Most of their desktops haven't been updated in years, and their laptops are slow to be updated. These Skylake chips that these new pros are using were released last year, and these new pros are just getting updated now. Now, the price is very expensive. The baseline 15-inch starts at $2,400 and get up over $4,000. But if you're looking for a macOS device that performs well and you're okay with paying the Apple tax, this is an incredible device that you will be happy with. I hope everybody's having a great holiday season. Thank you guys so much for watching this video, and I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.